Once again, I'm Ken Godevanis, and this is Digging for Scriptural Gems. Thanks for joining us as we study the Old Testament in detail. We're currently working through 1 Kings, and today we're looking at chapter 2, verses 5 to 9, in which the dying King David completes his charge to his son Solomon, his offspring with Bathsheba, who has recently been anointed king. Here, David takes the charge from the earlier godly spiritual level and brings it down to brass tacks. Let's see what he tells Solomon. David starts off by reminding Solomon of all the misdeeds of his commander Joab, and he charged him to employ his wisdom. Apparently, Solomon had indicated that he was wise as he was growing up, and make sure that Joab doesn't die and go to Sheol in peace. In other words, he can die, but he's not to go there in peace. Make him pay for what he did to the family and to Israel. On the other hand, David tells Solomon to deal kindly with the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadite. They should eat at Solomon's table, he says, as they had assisted me, David, when I fled from Absalom, your brother. Next, David mentions Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, who had cursed David as he was going to Mahanaim. David tells Solomon that he had been pardoned, and David promised that he would not put him to death. But it seems that David wanted Solomon to punish him now one way or another, according, of course, to his wisdom. And as far as we know, that was the end of his charge to the new king. Wow. If you were Solomon, what do you do with that kind of charge? What do you do with any charge your dying father, or mother for that matter, leaves you with? I have had a charge placed on me by my father on his last day on earth while in his hospital bed, his deathbed. It was simply this: son, don't sell the family property that we first bought when we came to Canada and where you grew up, where I grew up, that is. I promised I would not. What else could I do? As I write these words, sitting in my study some 17 years after his death, I'm glad to report that I kept that promise. While we tore down the old house, built over 70 years ago, we erected a new family home that we enjoy today on the same property, on the same land, which is what he really wanted. We're going to stop there and look a little closer at our passage. If you look at the wrongdoings of Joab, especially as listed in the New English translation, you will be surprised that even in his frail stage of his life, his dying days, David remembered them with great accuracy. It's so easy for us to remember all the wrongs others have served us. Much harder to remember the good things people did for us, or for that matter, the wrongs we did unto others. Perhaps this is a good time to stop and reflect on these things. Who knows, it may cause us to do things a little differently going forward. Also of interest, especially in the New English Translation version, is that David tells Solomon to do what he likes with Joab, but to not let him, quote, live long and or die a peaceful death. I guess the thing that strikes me here is this: did David forget about asking God for his own wisdom and direction before giving any such advice to his son? Did he forget about the concept that it is God that is the avenger, not us? In one sense, this is a bit of a disappointment to those that have cheered our hero on through his entire life. As far as the sons of Barzillai go, David instructs Solomon, as the NET puts it, to provide for their needs, which is another way of saying, let them eat at your table. For Shimei, however, while David promised not to kill him himself, he says to David, but now, as the NET says, but now, don't treat him as if he were innocent. Make sure he has a bloody death. You know, there's a big difference between the phrase, but God, which we find throughout the Bible, and one with just but and no God. And instead replacing God with, now I want you to do so-and-so. But now I want you to do so-and-so. We should point out though, that both the Lucianic, that is the Lucian of Antioch's work, his revised edition or recension of the Old Greek, as well as the Vulgate, the Latin version undertaken primarily by St. Jerome, both of those texts have here you rather than now, but you. The two words are homonyms in Hebrew. That is, they sound the same and a mistake could easily have been made. But either way, the end result or wish is the same. What, in fact, is happening to David? Hopefully, some of the great commentators we rely on will be able to share some light on this. Chuck Smith summarizes it this way. He says, quote, David was just like we are. We carry grudges and animosities and all. End of quote. David Gusick puts it this way. David wanted Solomon to begin his reign in justice and to first give justice to Joab. End of quote. Well, maybe not. Gusick continues. Many people think that David did not command Joab's execution during his lifetime because Joab knew about the murder of Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, 2 Samuel chapter 11, verses 14 to 25. Now, the idea is that Joab used this knowledge as blackmail against David. This may be true, but it seems that others knew of David's sin with Bathsheba and against Uriah also, such as Nathan the prophet, and then the servants in David's court. It would seem that Joab's knowledge was only effective as blackmail if no one else knew it. At the very least, David knew the complexity of Joab's character. He knew the loyalty and sacrifices Joab made for David over the years, and he knew his violence and ruthlessness. Commentators Patterson and Ostell say, quote, David felt under obligation to Joab, and though David was certainly not lacking in courage, he was not able to cope with the mixture of Joab's loyalty and his misdeeds. Finally, with respect to Shimei, Gusick says, quote, it was right for David to keep his vow, not to personally kill Shimei, but it was also right for him to make sure that Shimei received justice without David breaking his vow. End of quote. Well, you decide. Here's Robert Jameson on our dilemma with David's charge. It must not be supposed that in these dying instructions, he says, David was evincing a fierce, vindictive spirit. He is rather to be considered as acting in the character of a king and magistrate, in noticing crimes which he had not been in a condition to punish, and pointing out persons of whom Solomon would be under a necessity to rid himself as dangerous to the state. The grateful mention of Barzillai's kindness, 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 7, was, however, a personal feeling that does honor to the warmth of his heart, and his silence as to Mephibosheth, the son of his beloved Jonathan, would imply the previous death of that prince. Okay, there you have it. You tell me what you think. Did David, who, by the way, dies in our next study, did he end well? Please leave a comment on YouTube or the social media that you use to get to our video, or write to us at kgod@accordconsulting.com. Keep on studying your Bible, like our video on YouTube, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Digging for Scriptural Gems. Until next time.